Beauford to Electric Boogaloo. It's my second 1960 Buick. My original one was Big Beauford, hence the sequel. That car was sold mostly because it had massive amounts of rot covered with body filler. This car is 100 times more solid than that one. But it's starting to show some of the same rust spots as my first 60 had. So I'm trying to catch them before they get too bad. I'm finding there are 4 main spots so far. There are a couple spots on the trunk near the fins, a spot on the passenger door where the handle delete was done, a spot on the lower driver fender, and the worst bunch under the hood. So when I bought this car, we thought the underside of this hood, which is a pretty notorious spot for rust, was in really good shape, but it just had a lot of body filler on it. There's a massive hole right here, a pretty good sized one here, and then a bunch of them, real small ones going across. It's pretty common on a 60 Buick, the way that this hood is designed. Water just kind of traps underneath here, and the moisture just sits there, and eventually it does this. So the good news is eventually we're going to be doing a whole new paint job on this car. The bad news is I'm not ready to do it right now. So what I'm going to be doing is fixing up as many of these as I can, and ultimately we're just going to kind of refill it, get it as good as we can for now, and then we will do a good restoration on this when we have a little bit more time. After removing as much rust and old body filler as I can, I spray some rust reformer to help convert the rust that's there into a better surface for the body filler to adhere to. I use an air compressor to blow all the pieces of rust and debris away. Time to mix up some new body filler. I'm just using Bondo Professional Gold. Once I mix it up, as per the instructions, I spread it with a plastic spreader. Bondo applied. A little thicker than I'd like, but it was drying up real fast on me. Kind of chunky here. I'm gonna have to do that again. Take a rasp, Knock some of these loose guys off now. It's gotten kind of rubbery, so it makes it a little easier to clean up these big chunks. I really want to be careful not to go any further than I have to. Got this side nice and sharp. There's a couple of little low spots. Little low spot right there. I gotta get a little more filler in or some glazing putty. Little high spot right there. But otherwise the line is nice. A couple low spots right there I'm gonna take care of. Here is the underside of the hood after a fair bit of sanding. There's a few spots in here that need a little bit more body filler, but otherwise not too bad. There's a slightly deep spot there. The best way to do this is just to kind of feel it with your hand. The spot here, a couple little chips here that have to be sanded out all the rest of the way, feathered out. So between a combination of sanding and a little bit more body filler, we'll get this nice and smooth. You can see a couple spots here that I'm not happy with. I have to put a little bit more filler on those. You see a spot right there that needs a little bit more attention. So whatever you see here is going to show up in the paint. So if you can get rid of as many or all of these as possible, the paint will look a lot better. So I'm going to get this a little bit more feathered out, a little bit more sanded here, and see where we end up. Here is the second coat of body filler. A little bit smoother this time. And I'll get this sanded down after it dries, and hopefully that'll be it for that. So after sanding it down, we sprayed it with a very light coat of primer. We're going to let that dry for a little bit. And then we will go over it again, sand it down, put some more primer on, and then I still have to fill some of these little holes in here that need some glazing putty on them and smooth out some of the transitions of the Bondo. A few little light spots that need some more filler, but mostly it's coming out really smooth right here. Under here still needs a little bit of work. Now this coat isn't meant to do anything other than show me where I've sanded. I'm not trying to do a filler coat here. All this will do is make a unified surface. So when I'm seeing differences in color and textures and stuff like that, it allows me to just kind of make everything out a little more clearly. You see a bunch of stuff that has to be done here, all along this edge here, and then along this bottom edge here. The top is pretty good. The top's not too bad. There's a spot here, a couple little spots there. I was able to actually sand out most of this. All right, more sanding. All right, so this is about the 4th coat of primer and body filler. Clean this all up. This last coat was just kind of a skim to get everything, catch any little pinholes and stuff. I'm gonna put one more coat on of primer, and then if there's any little pinholes, I'll fill it with some glazing putty, and then this should be ready for some sort of paint. So I put a scuff coat on the hood, so we can repaint it all. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna paint the hood black, leave all the purple everywhere that it is for now, and we'll leave the dagger purple. So we'll just basically have a black hood. Clean up the dagger in a second. I'm just using a Duplicolor ready to spray lacquer. Doesn't require a hardener, and I know it's not the best paint in the world, but again, we just have to make it look okay and protect for another year or so. I'll put a nice 2K clear on top of this. I'm also using a piece of garbage Harbor Freight paint gun. Again, guys and gals, I'm not trying to win awards, I'm just trying to hold off the rust a little. And of course, I've forgotten to tighten my spray adjuster from the last time I used the gun, and I went to adjust the direction of the fan, and I almost lost the entire hopper of paint in my driveway. What a mess. Alright, back in business. I just grabbed a second spray gun. I'll deal with the other one later. I'm going to work on the underside of the hood first. That buzzing sound, it's just the sped up sound of the air compressor, by the way. I lay down a medium coat first, not too heavy, just enough to start putting color on the hood. The second coat goes on a little heavier. The third coat is pretty wet to make sure we have good coverage. I hit the edges again to make sure they have a thick enough coat for sanding. The hood is sprayed, a little bit of orange peel. We'll do some color sanding and we'll get rid of that. It's been 24 hours and the coat of black has cured. What we're going to do now is give it a very light sanding with some 1200 grit to get rid of some of the orange peel in it and see how that looks. And if we go down too far, I may have to spray it again, but I think it'll be alright. So let's get on that. bounced back and forth between 1200 and a few of the coarser grit papers. The 1200 wasn't doing the job, so I jumped to a 500 and an 800 to help speed it along, and then I finished with the 1200. The goal here is not to sand away too much, just knock down the high spots. I want the paint to have a uniform matte finish. But there's a fine line between sanding too much and not enough. For this particular sanding, I'd rather leave it a little high since I'm out of black paint and I don't want to have to go buy another quart if I mess it up. Again, we're just going for passable and doable.
Point right now is to just minimize the orange peel. You can still see some of that, but compared to this, there's a lot more. So soon we'll have it all evened out. Once it's nice and smooth, then we'll go ahead and do the clear coat.
I retaped the plastic to the windshield and further back on the car. This time I'm going to paint the clear coat onto the tops of the fenders as well. They're pretty dull also, so I gave them a light scuff last night and I'll blend them out with the clear coat as I do the hood.
So we're going to be doing this pretty damn dirty. I need to get this car painted today. Of course, somebody's burning something near my house. So the entire air outside is still dust. Pretty fun. I pulled the front end of my car into the garage. I'm going to try to spray it that way. Probably going to get a whole bunch of particulate into the clear coat, but I don't really have a choice at this point. I have to get this thing done. I can get this car out and get another car in. Again, this is just going to buy me a little bit of time with this paint job. It's going to look a little bit better than it did before. Get rid of some of the rust that was on the hood. Kind of treat those areas now while I can. And then eventually this car's going to get, like I said, fully blown apart, everything taken apart, all the rust repaired on properly with metal. And then we're going to go back and repaint the car properly. But in the meantime, I got to get this stuff going. So I bought this high-tech clear. Not sponsored, but cool. I'm going to mix this up. I believe this one's a 4-to-1 ratio. So we're going to mix it up here and then spray the first coat. I'll show you that process.
As per the instructions, I lay down a slightly medium coat of clear for the first coat, making full passes across the panel as close to 90 degrees to the hood as I can. The second coat goes on a few minutes later and a little heavier.
Time for the third coat. This will probably be the last one. I'm gonna do it pretty wet, try not to get any runs. So I brought it outside to let it bake a little bit, and it's not too bad. There are a lot of little spots and dirt debris in the paint, but it was kind of to be expected. I did this in a very uncontrolled environment, basically outside. We're going to do a little wet sand and buffing on it and try to clean up some of that stuff, but for the most part, not too bad looking. Just to get it back to some shininess and get rid of all the damage that was done on the hood and the rust. Overall, can't complain too much. I'm going to get the garnish back onto the hood, the chrome strip on that dagger part, and it'll look a lot better that way. But otherwise, can't complain too much. Like I said, you can see a bunch of little imperfections in there.